Welcome to lesson 46. In this lesson, we're going to Welcome to lesson 40. Bother trying to hack it. smtplib.smtp in caps. A lot of different steps to this, so I'm just going to go through all the steps of sending an email first, and then we can later look at each step in more detail. So first, let's go ahead and import smtplib. This is the Simple Mail Transfer Protocol library. And next we'll have to create a connection object, which I'll store in a variable called con. And the function we want to call is smtplib.smtp in caps. And then we'll have to connect to the SMTP server. This is the domain name of your email server. So I'm going to use Gmail. And their SMTP server is at smtp.gmail.com. And then followed by the port number, which is usually port 587. So we have this connection object. And now let's go ahead and connect to the server. So this will actually send out internet traffic from our Python program. We're going to call it the LO function, which this is a lot of history of why it has this weird name. It used to be hello with just one L, and then that got switched around to LO, and you just know that you have to call this function to start the connection. So that's the hello function. And next, we can see that it returned this tuple of an integer, which is the code, the response code. Anything that begins with 200 means okay, so 250 means yeah, okay, we connected. And then the second item here, this is actually a bytes object and not a string, but it can easily be interpreted as a string. Bytes are sort of beyond the scope of this lesson, but here you can see, okay, it returned us a message that said, you know, everything looks great. So after connecting with hello, we have to start the TLS encryption, so that way when we send our password, it'll be encrypted. So this returned code 220, that means everything's okay. And now let's go ahead and log in. And so we have to call the login function, pass it our username, so aswigert@gmail.com, and then the password, which is this. Of course, by the time you watch this video, I will have changed this password, so don't bother trying to hack into my email account. So now, our script is now logged in, and we can start sending emails by calling the sendMail function. So first, we'll have to get the from address, which will just be aswigert@gmail.com, and then we pass the to address. So I'm just going to go ahead and email myself. Just remember that the first one is the from address, which you should make your email address the same that you logged in with. And then the second is who this email is going to. and then followed by the body of the email. Now this is kind of complicated because the headers and the body of the email are all crammed into this string, and they follow a certain format. So here's the format. First type subject with a capital S, colon, space, and then type in the subject. So this will be a single line. I'll say the subject is so long. And then we'll have a new line character that ends the subject, and then another new line character that means we're done with the headers. There are other headers besides subject, but I'm just going to talk about the subject header. So basically we just need these two new line characters, and then we'll have the main body of the email. So I'll just write an email to myself. Dear Al, another new line character, so long, and thanks for all the fish. New line, from Al. Okay, and then I'll just press enter. Enter, and then it sends this email. So you can send multiple emails at a time with the send mail function. You can consult the documentation for that. And the return object and the return value from send mail is going to be a dictionary that has all of the emails that it failed to send. So if you get a blank dictionary back, that means the emails were all sent correctly. And so we could then send another email by calling the send mail method again. But at this point I'm already done, so I'll have my script just call quit. And that'll disconnect me from the SMTP server. I can go ahead and check my email right now and see that, yep, that got emailed to me. Okay, so that's... that's the entire process. Is Gmail details for generating an application-specific password. This is so that you can create a password for, say, Python. Each device will have people a day. Look up Google app-specific password, and you can find details for generating an application-specific password. This is so that you can create a password for, say, Python programs, or for your phone, or if your TV logs into your email account or whatever. And that way, if you have to change one of the passwords, you won't have to change your password on multiple devices, because each device will have its own password. And then calling the sendmail method will actually send out the email. Now note that a lot of email providers, in order to prevent people from, writing Python scripts that could spam millions of people a day, they'll usually limit you at, I think Gmail has a limit of about 100 or 150 emails per day. Other providers might have a limit of 500 or 1,000 per day. Basically, if you have to email out thousands of emails every day, you should probably look into an actual commercial mailing list service. So that's the entire process. To recap, first you just import smtplib, then you call the smtp function, passing it the domain name of your email provider's SMTP server, then call LO, then call starttls, then call login with your password and username, and then call sendmail with the from, to, and body strings of the email. Remember that in order to have the subject, you need to have subject : space, then the subject line, followed by 2 new line characters before the main part of the email is sent. Welcome to Lesson 47. In the last lesson we went over how to send emails using the SMTP protocol. In this lesson we'll learn how to check your email's inbox. So just as SMTP is the protocol for sending email, the Internet Message Access Protocol, or IMAP, specifies how to communicate with your email provider server to retrieve emails that were sent to your email address. Now unfortunately, IMAP is a fairly complicated protocol. The protocols for email are pretty much as old as the internet itself. They really weren't designed to be user-friendly. So Python comes with a module called IMAP-lib, but we're not going to use that one. Instead, we're going to use 2 third-party modules. First is called IMAP Client, and the second is called PyZmail. So you can install those using pip by consulting the course notes or Appendix A of the Automate the Boring Stuff with Python textbook. So again, I'm just going to go through all the code steps of checking your email using these modules. And once I'm done, I'll go back and dive into each step in more detail later. So the first thing we're going to do is import IMAP Client. Next, we're going to create a connection object by calling IMAP Client's IMAP Client, and pass it the domain name of the email provider's server, In my case, it's going to be imap.gmail.com. And then we're going to have to pass it this keyword argument, SSL equals true. SSL is an encryption algorithm. This basically tells IMAP client that yes, we do want to use SSL encryption. And next, we're going to call the login method. So I'm going to log into my email account, asweigert@gmail.com, and then pass it the password. And we get a bytes object, which can be interpreted like a string, and it basically tells us, yes, you have successfully logged in. That was the correct username and password. So we've logged in. Now let's select a folder. 99% of the time, this is just going to be inbox. And we're going to set the read-only keyword argument to true. So unless you're going to delete emails, you'll always want to set this as true just so that you don't accidentally delete any emails during this logged in session. And that returns a whole bunch of stuff which we can pretty much mostly ignore. And now we have to find email. SSL is an encryption algorithm. This basically tells IMAP client that yes, we do want to use bib, but we're not going to use that one. Instead, we're going to use two third-party. Unfortunately, IMAP is a fairly complicated protocol. The protocols for email are pretty much as old as the internet itself. They really weren't designed to be user-friendly. So Python comes with a module called IMAP-lib, but we're not going to use that one. Instead, we're going to use two third-party modules. The first is called IMAP client, and the second is called PyZmail. So you can install those using pip by consulting the course notes or Appendix A of the Automate the Boring Stuff with Python textbook. So again, I'm just going to go through all the code steps of checking your email using these modules. And once I'm done, I'll go back and dive into each step in more detail later. So the first thing we're going to do is import IMAP client. Next, we're going to create a connection object by calling IMAP client's IMAP client and pass it the domain name of the email provider's server. In my case, it's going to be imap.gmail.com. And then we're going to have to pass it this keyword argument, SSL equals true. SSL is an encryption algorithm. This basically tells IMAP client that yes, we do want to use SSL encryption. And next, we're going to call the login method. So I'm going to log into my email account, asweigert@gmail.com, and then pass it the password. And we get a bytes object, which can be interpreted like a string, and it basically tells us, yes, you have successfully logged in. That was the correct username and password. So we've logged in. Now let's select a folder. 99% of the time, this is just going to be inbox. And we're going to set the read-only keyword argument to true. So unless you're going to delete emails, you'll always want to set this as true just so that you don't accidentally delete any emails during this logged in session. And that returns a whole bunch of stuff which we can pretty much mostly ignore. And now we have to find emails, and we'll do that by calling the search method. So the IMAP protocol has its own special syntax for searching. You basically have to pass it as a list of strings, and each string will be formatted in this special IMAP search syntax. So I'm just going to use a really basic example. I want to grab all the emails since, let's say, August 20th of 2015. So remember, this is a string that is inside of a list, and that's what we're passing to the search method. This will return a list of unique IDs, and each unique ID references a particular email. So I'm going to store this in a variable called UIDs. That's great. So these UIDs are just integers. And we can see it's now returned all of the UIDs for the emails that I've received since August 20th of this year. This integer is far from actually a useful email, with a subject line and to and from email addresses that we're used to. We need to translate this UID into an actual email. And we do that by calling the fetch method for the connection object. But of course, this is also kind of complicated. The first argument will be a list with the UID that we want. So let's say I want to grab this email. I'm just going to copy and paste that UID there. And then the second argument is what parts of the email that we want. So you can look at the documentation for this later, but 99% of the time you're just going to pass it this. Body with square brackets after it, and then also flags. So you're just going to pass this exact list value. Oh, whoops, I want to store this in a variable called raw message. So fetch has returned this dictionary-like structure that you can see it looks really complicated, but it has all the information about the email inside of it. You can sort of see, oh, here's the from part, it's an email I sent to myself. Here was the subject line, and then the main part of the email. But, you know, we don't really want to parse this string on our own. That would be kind of complicated. So instead, let's just use the PyZmail module to do this for us. So let's go ahead and import this. Remember that PyZmail is a third-party module, so you'll have to install it with pip first. And what we're going to do now is call PyZmail's PyZMessage.factory method. I'm really sorry about this. This is super complicated. And we're going to pass it raw message, but not just raw message. We actually have to pass it this UID value, which is the key here, and then even inside of that, because that's the key and the value is another dictionary inside there, we're going to pass it this value, which is a bytes value. It's technically not a string. You can see that because it begins with a lowercase b here. So I'm going to have to copy and paste this. And so this particular part of the raw message that was returned by fetch is passed to pyzmail.pyzmessage.factory. Yeah, so as I said, this is really complicated. The good news is you don't have to memorize all of this. You can always just look up this information later. Oh, right, and so this returns a PyZMessage object. So we want to save that to a variable. We'll just save that to a variable called message. And finally, once we have this message object, we have something that we can work with easily. So we can call the getSubject method on this message object. You can see here's that subject line for the email that I sent to myself, so long. We can also get any addresses from it, like the from address, who this email was from. And you can see usually this tuple value will have a string of the email sender's name, if it was set, and then their email address. I don't have one set for this email account, so it just sent aswigert@gmail.com as my full name. But we could also see who this was sent to, which apparently is blank. That might have been something weird with the smtplib method calls that I made. But you can see in the blind carbon copy, this was CC'd also to aswigert. But if we want the actual body of the email, we're going to have to go through yet some more complicated parts. So you may be familiar with the
Hello, Jag.
The fact that you can send text emails, which are just plain text, or HTML emails. If you've ever received an email and it had colorful text or different fonts or images embedded inside of it,